Thank you everyone for joining us today for this third session of Meet the Researcher. Today we are going to be speaking with our third researcher. It's going to be Emma Benjaminson. Emma, if you can please advance the slide. Thank you. Emma is a graduate student studying mechanical engineering in Dr. Rebecca Taylor's lab. For our agenda today, we're going to be doing some introductions. We'll get to meet Emma, learn about where she grew up and her experiences in middle and high school, and then college, and then grad school. We'll get to learn about her research, and we'll dive into her research about DNA Microswimmers and GAN. We'll do a 360 lab tour, and then we'll have our breakout sessions with our hands-on activity, and then we will come back for our conclusion at the end. But first, we'll do our introductions. And to start, I'm sure you all know me by now. I'm Kristen Lavery. I'm the Assistant Director and Business Manager of the Leonard Gelfand Center for Service Learning and Outreach. I've been with the Gelfand Center for almost 8 years. My background is in elementary education. And while I was in grad school, I was a substitute teacher and I did wedding photography on the weekends. And the next member of our coordination team is actually Dr. Vicki Webster-Wood, and she's with us here again today. She's an assistant professor in mechanical engineering. Vicki, if you want to say a few words about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Tried to change up my bullet points this week since I know many of you have heard from me before. Like Kristen said, I'm a professor of mechanical engineering. I have 2 very big shepherds, a German Shepherd and a Belgian Malinois, and learned to garden this summer to grow our own veggies. And the last member of our coordination team, Emma, if you could advance the slide, is Allison Rojas, who is an undergraduate student here at Carnegie Mellon. And Allison, can you say some things about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I also might have met some of you too in a previous session, but just a little bit about myself is that I'm researching under Professor Webster-Wood's lab, and some stuff that I'm involved in on campus is that I help out with CMUCS Academy before. And I've also created my own comic book about an alpaca, and I've recently taken up dancing. And so, and now we want to introduce the mentor. So we're going to ask all the mentors in alphabetical order to introduce themselves. If you can share like your name, your major, and maybe one fact about yourself. It's okay if it's on alphabetical order. So if you can just unmute yourself and turn your video on and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Sharfin. I'm a senior mechanical engineering student at CMU. And a fact about myself, I have 3 older sisters. So it's basically like I have 4 moms.
Hi, I'm Terry. I'm a PhD student in the robotics department at CMU. And during quarantine, I rewatched all the Marvel movies in order.
Hi, my name is Maddie. I'm a senior in chemical and biomedical engineering, and my favorite colors are purple and green.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mark. I'm a PhD student in electrical and computer engineering. And I love to play chess and Go, which is also another board game.
Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I'm a PhD student in mechanical engineering. And in my free time, I like to, or when I'm not doing schoolwork, I like to do watercolor painting.
I'm Julian. I'm a PhD student in mechanical engineering. And I think one one of my hot fun fact is I like to learn new instruments, but not well enough to play them well, just well enough to barely play them. I find that fun.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for introducing themselves. And then we can just go to the next slide now.
So now we're going to meet our presenter for today, Emma Benjaminson. And Emma, if you could advance the slide. Emma is a PhD student in mechanical engineering. And Emma, do you want to say a few words of introduction?
Sure. Sorry. Almost there. Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? Hope you're all doing well. Sorry, I forget we can't talk face to face. As Professor Westerwood said, I'm a PhD student in mechanical engineering. I like biking, running, playing soccer, being outside. But when it's raining, I like to read books. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. A little bit of history. And one time I rode a camel and it almost bit me. So I haven't ridden camel since then.
Oh, no. Awesome. Well, we can go ahead and kind of dive right in. And Emma, I know you had a interesting experience in middle school. If you want to bring up the next thing. Yeah, where did you go to middle school?
Right. So I was very lucky in that my parents were working for the U.S. State Department, which means we worked. They worked overseas with different U.S. embassies, and so while I was in middle school, I was living in Burkina Faso, which is in West Africa, and I'll show you that on a map in a second. But I actually wanted to open the floor to everybody here first, and just ask you to think about. Is there a place in the world that you'd like to visit that maybe you haven't been to, or a place that you've already been that was really cool that you would love to go back to? I've got a map on the wall behind me in case you need a reminder of what your options are. But if you want to just write into the chat some places that you would love to see, I can read some of them out as we go here just to get us started. Okay, we've got France, Stanley, Idaho. Okay. Brazil, Antarctica, Germany and Canada, Fiji. Very cool. England, nice. Yeah. Awesome. Germany, Canada, national parks in Alaska, India and Mexico. Oh, guys, we should go traveling. This is awesome. Very cool. Yeah, they do sound like wonderful places. All right, so we have some world travelers here. Awesome.
Very cool. So, like Kristen's comment in chat, oh, the places you'll go. And one of the awesome things about doing research at the college level is sometimes when we're able to travel and the world is a little more normal, our student researchers get to travel to conferences to present at things. So I know when I was a student, I got to go to Barcelona in Spain and Edinburgh in Scotland for conferences. Yeah. Emma, have you gone any cool places for conferences?
Philadelphia.
Okay. Philly's pretty cool. Did you get to see the Liberty Bell?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome.
You're gonna have to tell us a secret about how you get to go to the cool places sometime.
Yeah. So it's luck of the draw where the conference is. But you were going to tell us about Burkina Faso.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how many scientific conferences they're hosting, but can you all see the slide okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, Burkina Faso is in West Africa. It's landlocked. Sorry, I should have gotten a map that was a little more zoomed out, but you can see it's here. It's above Ghana, which is on the coast, if you remember, Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Benin, Mali's to the north. I lived in the capital city. I know this word looks a little bit weird to pronounce, but you would call this Ouagadougou, or Ouaga for short, if you're in the know. And I had to go digging for some pictures. A lot of these are from my mom's camera roll, so thanks, Mom. But you can see the school I went to up here. I went to ISO, the International School of Wagga. We were the Turtles, which isn't great if you're on the track team, but it's okay if you're on the softball team. I have a little sister, but she's way smarter and way cooler than me. And we're hanging out here at a game park called Nzinga, which is here in the south of the country. But the thing that I think, maybe most people don't know about Burkina is that it's beautiful. There are so many different environments and things to see that you don't hear much about. So like, for example, we went north once to the edge of the Sahel Desert, which then if you keep going north becomes the Sahara, which maybe many of you have heard of. We went to a small town called Gandafabu in the north, and this is a picture my mom took of sunset over the dunes there. Over here, like if you go to the southwest, there's really cool stuff. Like there's some gorgeous, very old mosques built in Bobo Dioulasso. And Bobo is sort of like one of the cool towns you can go to, as a big open air market. So you can walk through and buy everything from food to artwork to clothing. It's really, really very vibrant. And then if you keep going in that direction, we actually went to see this waterfall at Pamphora, which is huge. Like the water just rushes through, and you'd never imagine that it was there in this country where they have, the edge of the Sahara. They also have these gorgeous waterfalls. So it was just like a really fun couple of years to explore this country.
Awesome. And so while you were there, I know that you've talked about having to go find Wi-Fi access, right?
Yep.
During that time, where did your parents take you to access Wi-Fi and learn more about science?
Yeah, I think actually, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit older, so I'm not even sure that it was Wi-Fi back then. It might have just been we needed a landline. I don't know if anyone here remembers the old hookup sound when you dial up to your internet, but we didn't always have internet at our house. So my mom, when she wasn't working, she'd take me to the embassy because they had a nice internet connection there. And neither of my parents were engineers. As I said, they were more interested in political science and things like that. And so they didn't really know what engineers did, and I didn't know. So my mom just said, well, we'll go figure it out. So she took me to the embassy, and we would dial into the internet, and then we spent hours pouring through the course catalogs of different universities. I probably still have printouts somewhere of Caltech's Aeroastro program for engineers, and I circled the classes I wanted to take, and I'd read up on what astronautics was, and we'd spend hours reading articles about I think they were just building like the first Spaceship One back then and stuff like that. So I just, I wanted to tell that story because I think not everybody grows up with parents who are in STEM fields, but I think that doesn't mean you can't figure out how it works and go explore on your own. And college course catalogs turn out to be a great way to learn what kind of stuff you should study in school, so that when you go to college, you know what you need to know to get started.
And did you participate in any science experiments in middle school?
I did do a couple. I was just thinking about it this morning. We had science days at ISO. We had a really good science teacher who kind of ran this nice program. And I remember building bottle rockets. We'd put, sorry, I'm old. No one remembers what film canisters are anymore, but we'd put like baking soda and vinegar in a film canister and then build a rocket around it, and then it would launch itself. And we do that in the schoolyard. I tried to build my own hydroelectric plant once, which was kind of fun. It didn't work very well, but don't let that stop you from trying. But another story I wanted to share, Vicki, actually, if we had a minute, those were really cool experiments, and they did give me a sense that I could, if I wanted to build something and try something, that I could, and I'd learn something, whether it worked or not. But but actually the moment that I feel like I first felt like an engineer was from a completely different experience. When I was attending ISO, I started in 6th grade, and a lot of my classmates were starting at the school at the same time. Like they'd come in from elementary schools, and now they were going to start middle school here. And in Burkina, the primary language is French. It's not English. And a lot of students were Burkinabe, and they had started at ISO because they wanted to learn English and have polish their English by the time they were going to go to university. And so when I started school, about half the class was made up of students who spoke French, and then the other half was students who spoke English. And most of us had a little bit of the other language. Like I could speak a little bit of French, and most of my French-speaking classmates could speak a little English, but not a lot. And the instruction at the school was English, so it was a little bit difficult if you were if French was your mother tongue for you to understand what was going on in class. And so what they did, which was I think really smart, is we got paired up. So I was paired with my buddy Nellie, and I remember sitting next to her during French class. And I am so lucky that I got to work with Nellie, because I wasn't very good at math back then, and we were doing fractions. I don't know if anyone's doing fractions right now, but I was having a really hard time figuring out how they worked. But I could understand the teacher, and so I would listen to what Mr. McGee said. Then I'd translate it into French, and then Nellie and I would sort of sit down and we'd start figuring stuff out together on paper. And as you all know, math is a universal language. It doesn't matter what other languages you speak, math works the same. And so together we were able to figure out, you know, the problems in the workbook, and we did homework together. And by the end of the year, we both understood fractions and everything else we'd covered in math really, really well. And my French was better, and Nellie's English was better. We'd learned that you can collaborate with other people, and that it doesn't matter, you know, if you don't have a lot in common, you can figure stuff out. And that taught me too to love STEM and to love math and science, because you're talking about things that sort of transcend language, they transcend borders, they transcend differences between people, because they're sort of these universal truths. And it made me really enjoy that process. And that is basically what being an engineer is you have to work with other people and figure things out. And so I wanted to share that with you guys, because you can be an engineer right now working with other people, and you'll have developed the most important skill you need to be an engineer or a scientist.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I really resonate with the engineering and math is a shared language between all of us. Cool. Well, and then in 8th grade, you moved, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we did. So when you're in the State Department, you have to move a lot because they keep rotating you through different embassies. And so my dad took us to a new country called Namibia, which is in southwestern Africa. And I was curious to know if anyone knew what the capital of Namibia might be. So I know this isn't really a science question, but if someone wants to, I think we've got a poll. Okay. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Chris.
You have a poll. So I just launched it now. And maybe Emma, if you can help me with some of the pronunciation.
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, so we have 4 options on the table. Bamako is choice A. B is Johannesburg or Joburg. C is Windhoek, and D is Gaborone. So I'm curious to see if folks are who got it. Okay, we got some people thinking it might be A or B. Bamako's kind of taking the lead. Okay.
So,
Yeah. All right.
all right, I'm going to go ahead and end polling.
Okay.
My results here.
It looks like folks are thinking it might be Bamako. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, team. That's not quite right. Bamako is the capital of Mali. Windhoek is the capital of Namibia, but that's okay. We didn't tell you we were going to do geography this morning, so no worries, no stress.
Cool. Sorry, I was muted. And where, can you tell us where Namibia is located?
Yeah, so this, I'm really sorry. I should have thought about getting larger maps. But Namibia is in, if you think about Africa, it's near the bottom. It's just above South Africa, which is at the bottom of the continent. And it's got a very long coastline. And then as you can see here over to the east, we've got Botswana and then Angola to the north.
Cool. And so you've told me before that science wasn't your initial preferred subject. When you were here, what were you most interested in at the time?
Yeah, no, I don't know if maybe some other people on this call have had this experience, but my science classes at FinTech were very like rote learning. So we just had to memorize a lot of stuff and it wasn't very interesting. So what I loved at the time, and I still love it, was we studied history and we would study local history. So we did a lot of history about Namibia. We'd studied a lot of world history, a lot of European history, and I loved it. Because our teacher would let us argue a lot. And so we'd read stuff in the book and then we'd argue about like, was it the Kaiser's realpolitik that drove him to begin wars with other countries? Was it their expansionist economic policies? Like what was pushing them to do these things? And we got really passionate about arguing with each other about stuff like that. And it was something you could really care about and want to learn more about. And the other thing that was really cool about it was when we studied Namibian history, it was in our backyard. We would go out and we'd see, sites where battles had been fought. We could see the buildings where different people had lived. We could see, different parts of the country where different kinds of people had lived and different groups and stuff like that. So it was so tangible and real that it was really exciting. And I also wanted to share that with everybody else because I wanted you all to feel like you don't have to only love, science and math if you want to be an engineer. I think it makes you a better scientist and a better thinker if you like lots of things and you're interested in lots of different things. And studying history has made me a better writer, which is still very important in engineering. It made me, like I said, it made me better at arguing my point. And so I learned to structure arguments and come up with, here's my thesis, and then these are the points that support my argument. And that is extremely valuable in engineering as well. And you also learn about people and you learn about different places and, history might have happened a long time ago, but it still informs what's happening now. And I think as an engineer, it helps you because at the end of the day, you are trying to design things for people. And if you understand where they're coming from and what's motivating them and what their life experiences look like and why they look that way, that can only help you do better design, do better problem solving. So that I just wanted you folks to all think like, don't feel like you can only study science and math to get ahead. Just explore what's interesting to you.
Awesome. And so then you went to high school and you had a week-long internship in high school. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how it impacted your last 2 years?
Yeah, for sure. So I was finishing up, this was probably my last year in Namibia. And my high school asked all the students to go get a little bit of work experience. Some of you may have done something like this, or maybe you will. And so I went and found a small company that was building solar powered systems for farmers in more rural areas. Namibia is very well electrified, but sometimes in storms and things like that, a power line will go down or the generator will stop working for a little bit or something like that. And so you might be out of luck if you're in one of these more rural areas. So a lot of people wanted to buy standalone systems where you had a couple solar panels and all of the equipment you needed to process the electricity that you were generating. And then, you might be able to run your well or other essential systems that you needed. And so my job for a week was it was a little bit old school, but I was building the inverter that would process DC current to AC current, and they had the design already, and they sat me down at a bench, and they gave me all the components, and they said, okay, you have to solder everything and then put it in the box, And when you solder, when you work with electrical components, you always have to ground yourself, so that if some current flows into your body from whatever you're working on, that it goes to ground and it doesn't hurt you in any way. But today we have nice fancy like little bracelets that you wear, and then you connect the bracelet to like a pipe or something so that you ground yourself. But back then we didn't have those. So I actually wore a fake Rolex wristwatch because it had a metal armband, and then we tied some wire to that and then connected it to the pipe. And so I would sit there where the only time I've ever worn a Rolex was when I was soldering parts onto that inverter. But it was a short week, but it was so much fun because that was the first time I realized that engineering could be used to help other people and make people's lives better. Like I said, Namibia was very well electrified, but even so, making it possible for farmers to not worry about this and to have access to electricity all the time was really exciting. And that was a moment of realization for me, because I'd watched my parents try to solve problems through like diplomatic interactions with the host country that we were in, and things were very slow that way. You definitely get things done when you're in government, but it can take a long time. There's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of negotiation. But to me, engineering was like a way to short circuit that. Like if you could just build something that solved the problem, you didn't have to wait for years for funding to come through for a new electrification project to reinforce the grid. You wouldn't need it anymore because you'd have standalone systems. So it was, I think, the moment when I thought engineering is really pretty cool. I think that's what I want to do with my life.
Awesome. And you participated in an IB program, right? Can you tell us what that is and what you did in that?
Yeah, for sure. I think there are a couple schools in Pittsburgh that have this program as well. It's called the IB, or International Baccalaureate Program. I think it's British originally. I think they do all the grading in Cardiff, Wales, because it's a 2-year program for the last 2 years of your high school. It's a lot like AP, except it's you only take IB classes for your last 2 years, pretty much, and you take exams that they've written for you, and then you mail it to Cardiff, Wales, and they grade them, and then they tell you what your scores are and if you can graduate. And so when I finished high school in Canada, we moved to Canada at that point, and you can choose to take you get a little bit of choice in the IB program about what you want. And so at this point, I knew, okay, I'm gonna go be an engineer. So I took chemistry, physics, math, and English, history. Must have taken something else, huh? You have to take 6 classes, maybe theory of knowledge. I'm so sorry. The cool ones though were math, chemistry, and physics. I was actually the only girl in my physics class, which was a little bit scary, but we had a really good time. It was really a very challenging program. The math was quite difficult. Some of the sciences, parts of the science were really challenging, but it was fun. And I think, if you go after challenging programs, like when you're in high school, and if you can struggle through them and you can figure things out, it makes you feel confident. It makes you feel like I can do this. It might look hard when you start, but I'm gonna figure these things out. So yeah, I would encourage people not to be scared because they feel like maybe I can't do this, or maybe this isn't for me, or maybe I don't belong here. I think when we all walk into challenging courses, we're all feeling that way when we start, but that should never stop you from keeping on going.
Thanks, Emma. I'm gonna hand things over to Allison for a bit here.
Hi. So thank you for sharing all of that. Emma, by the way, it was really helpful to hear all about those experiences. And now we're gonna head over to like where you went to college. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and your major?
Yeah, for sure, Allison. I went to MIT in Boston. MIT stands for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, but my parents used to tease me and say I was going to the Massachusetts Institute of Trucking. I still can't drive a truck, but that's okay. And I studied mechanical engineering too. I've always done that in school. And actually the reason I picked it is just because mechanical engineering is quite broad. So if you're not sure what kind of engineering you want to do in school, Mechie is kind of a good choice because it lets you study a little bit of everything else and it gives you all the math you need. So from there, you can kind of go after whatever you want. And I think there's some other folks on this call who might have some experience with that as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a really good, like, gives you a good scope of everything.
Although, Allison, are you a CS major?
Mechie is what? Mechanical engineering as well.
Good.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about what you did after you graduated? And also, like, if you would like to talk about your experiences while you were there.
Sure. Yeah. Just real fast. MIT going to college was sort of it was really fun. It was like I think a lot of people's experiences really eye-opening, challenging. I put some of these photos up. Oh, I really like at the top here. We got to do plastic injection molding, which I didn't think you could just do at a university, but they had all the machines for it. And that was really fun because it was very hands-on and we designed these yo-yos. And
for people who might not know what plastic injection is, do you want to maybe just touch on it a little bit?
Sure. It's the most common technique for making things out of plastic. I'm trying to find things that are plastic around me. But it's basically what you do is you have these molds, and that's the thing that's on the table that I'm working on in that photograph. They're big, heavy metal molds, and an injection molding machine will squeeze the two halves of the mold together and then shoot plastic inside of that mold at very high temperature. And then you let it cool, and then you open up the two halves of the mold and the part falls out that you want. And it's, and it might not be so great for the environment, but it is the dominant way of making plastic parts. And it turned out that actually learning this in college was very helpful for what I did as an engineer professionally later. So it's just kind of a cool way of making things, making a lot of them very fast. Yeah. I also put up some of these pictures. One thing that I got to do in college a lot was they gave us lots of opportunities to learn leadership skills, how to work on teams. I talked about this earlier, but I wanted to bring it up again that, engineering is definitely, there were a lot of, late nights doing homework with my buddies. But also it was the first time I got to try working with other people. Sometimes I led teams, like this picture in the middle here, where we're on a treadmill going backwards. My friend Stephanie in that photo, she's wearing shorts, I'm wearing the pants, and we're running together, we're in this race for one of our classes. Our team had designed this backwards treadmill, and we're trying to race other people to the end of the course. But that class actually was like a capstone class, and that allowed us, we were leading a team made up of like 14, 15 people. And it was such a novel experience that, you may not get again in your career. Definitely not that early, where you can learn what it's like to like set goals for your team and to talk to other people and sort of figure out how are we going to build complicated things like treadmills that go backwards. And if you find yourself with the opportunity to do something like that, I would really encourage you to do it, because even if it makes you feel extraordinarily uncomfortable, and it certainly did for me, I'm very introverted, so I don't like spending lots of time talking to other people. It makes me very scared, but it made me feel like, I could argue for my point, I could argue for my viewpoint, I could listen to others and learn from other people and change my mind based on what they told me. We could solve difficult problems together. It gave me a lot of skills that then became extraordinarily valuable in my professional life. So college teaches you a lot more than just the pen and paper stuff, for sure.
That sounds like an amazing experience. And you also volunteered with Habitat for Humanity, which sounds really exciting too.
Yeah, and actually I did get to travel further than Philly for that one. That's taken in New Orleans. We got to go there a couple of times, which was really fun.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, and so thank you for sharing this, and just like maybe for people who are just thinking about like, oh, what do I do next after college? Like, do you want to share like how like what you did after you graduated?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely I felt like I knew what I was doing up until I got into college. Then I knew what I was doing while I was there. And then you're absolutely right, Allison. After that, it was like, oh, I don't know what to do. No one told me what I was supposed to do next. And when I was a senior, I had to start thinking about, what am I going to do? Am I going to apply to grad school? Am I going to go to work? And at the time, I was sort of I'll just say I was done going to school, and I thought I was never going to go back to school. I never thought I'd be here. I was telling everybody, I'm done. I got my I'm going to get my bachelor's in engineering. That's all I need. I got this. Like, I'm ready to go, which is funny now. But at the time I was really confident that was the direction I wanted to go in, and there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. And what I did end up doing was just really cool and changed my outlook on things. So first, I got a job where I worked for Boeing. They make airplanes. And I was, it was really fun because I was in a machine shop a lot of the time. And we were coming up with new techniques for drilling holes to put the wing on the body, on the fuselage of the aircraft. And so I was working in the machine shop. So if I wasn't making chips fly, I was on the factory floor and talking to the folks who actually drill the holes and put the airplane together. And, I also got to work on a robotics installation. And so I was working the night shift in the biggest factory in the world, building airplanes with robots, which was really cool to be doing within your first year of graduating college. So that was really a super cool activity. And then when that ended, I thought, airplanes are pretty cool, and this company is pretty cool, but I kind of wanted to do something that made me feel like I was helping people a little more directly. I mean, I understand that airplanes are the backbone of the economy, in a lot of ways, but I kind of felt like maybe there was something I could do that would help people more directly. And so I switched to working for a medical device company. And I'm sorry, I don't really have a lot of pictures for this part because you can't always take pictures at work, but this company I worked for made products for people with glaucoma. And if you're not familiar with that disease, that's okay. It's usually older people who get it, but it can cause blindness if you get it slowly over time. And most of my family actually, as we get older, we tend to have glaucoma. And so my family was really excited when I joined this company because they're like, oh, you got to fix things before we all get it, and then send us free samples so we can use them. We didn't, but but it became an opportunity to work on a problem that felt meaningful to me because I knew people for whom this might help. And so that was a really fun couple of years because I joined the company when it was still quite small, so I got a lot of responsibility. I was leading project teams. We were getting FDA approval for different products. I was talking, I was using my plastic injection molding experience again. I would visit suppliers and we'd figure out how to make our parts. We'd figure out how to test them to prove to the FDA that they worked. We'd do, we'd have to write all the marketing materials. We'd have to translate all the labeling into 30 different languages. I actually, because I spoke a little bit of French, I would catch spelling mistakes in the French translations, and then we'd have to send them back and do it over again. I would argue with the colorblind marketing manager about what color the advertising should be in. I got to do it all. It was fun. That was a great time to use all the skills that I'd learned about how to work with other people because, I had the engineering knowledge to understand how the product worked. And I also could work with people from all kinds of, different departments to bring the team together and deliver these products. Ultimately, though, I think it started to get a little bit repetitive, and I kind of knew that I wanted to solve more difficult technical problems, and so at that point, I decided to go back to grad school.
Like, what a amazing experience to have built like both like airplanes as well as medical, like being involved in the medical devices arena, and then sort of bring all that knowledge back, to pursuing a PhD.
Yeah, and I'd like people to think about that. You know, if you want a career that looks very diverse and gives you the chance to do all these different problems, mechanical engineering kind of lets you do that. That degree says like I can solve problems, and so people will let you go from airplanes to teeny tiny devices in the eye.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And then, yeah, I think we'll just go on to the next slide. Okay. And then like, what made you decide to come to CMU specifically for your PhD?
Yeah, there was no doubt in my mind that this was way far and away the best choice for grad school. CMU has amazing robotics research happening here. We have really cool stuff happening in the space of nanofabrication, which was something I was interested in because I'd been working on eyes and I wanted to go smaller. And the other wonderful thing about CMU is we're very collaborative here. I think, you know, all the other mentors, you could probably all speak to this too, that if you're ever stuck on something, there's 100 people who know something about the problem you're working on and are happy to help you figure it out. Like, I think Julian's on this call. He helps me all the time. I'm always emailing him like, how do I do this? And, you know, we're in neighboring labs, but Julian's just really kind and willing to help me out. And you know, that's how things work here. It's normal. It's not competitive. We're not trying, you know, one lab isn't trying to beat out the other lab for research funding or something like that. And we're constantly talking to each other and trying to learn, okay, what are you working on? What problems are you solving? Can I use that for what I'm working on? And it just makes it a really enjoyable and educational experience. I wouldn't go anywhere else.
Yeah, no, for sure. I completely 100% agree with you about the collaborative nature and like, yeah, everybody being so kind and helpful. So yeah, thank you for sharing that too. And so now we're going to move on to like Emma's research specifically. And as you might recall, Charlie also worked in Dr. Rebecca Taylor's lab, although they're working on completely different projects. So we're excited to go into like, you know, just go into all the details and understand it. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide, please.
And Charlie taught me everything I know, so I owe a lot to Charlie for sure.
So what is glaucoma, Emma?
Yeah, right. So,
Yeah.
so one of the things I wanted to work on when I came back to grad school was I really thought that in industry we'd hit this point where we couldn't make things smaller with the methods we had. Like with the injection molding, there's kind of a lower limit to how small you can make things. But if you're treating diseases like glaucoma, which, like I said, cause blindness in your eye, you need to implant, like you need to deliver drugs to very specific locations in the eye. I'm looking at this diagram here. Like you want drugs to go to very specific locations. You want to be able to get into the eye, and you know, it's always helpful if you can image things in the eye. If you can look at, you know, the optic nerve, often we do a lot of imaging in that area. Sometimes you want to take a look at the pressure, but just in the front of the eye. And it's very difficult to do that with big things, you know. But if you had teeny tiny little robots and sensors and things like that, you could study exactly the parts of the eye you needed to look at in order to figure out if someone has glaucoma or not, or to treat it if you know a patient has it. So when I came back to grad school, I found a project that was building tiny microswimmers, and I thought, this is perfect. This is what we need. We need to make things that are even smaller than the smallest implantable FDA approved device so that we can treat these diseases more effectively.
And Emma, we've got a question that's come in chat. What are the microswimmers made of?
Ah, Peter, you're awesome. Thank you for asking. So I will show more in a minute, but just to give you a little bit of a spoiler, and with Professor Taylor, we're making them out of magnetic particles and DNA. So that's how small we're talking about. We're talking about nanometer scale microswimmers.
Wow. Wow. And do you how is glaucoma currently treated?
Right. So first, it's we need to find out if someone has glaucoma, and usually what it does to your eye is it kind of causes pressure to build up, and often that pressure will then damage like the optic nerve, and that's what causes you to go blind, is that you sort of lose your field of vision. So instead of seeing everything out of your eyes, suddenly you sort of like there's darkness at the edges of your vision until you can kind of only see what's directly in front of you. And so first we diagnose the disease, and we use things like this device in the center image here. It's a tonometer. It fires a little puff of air at your eye, and then we look at the air that gets reflected off your eye and comes back to the machine, and we use that to determine what the pressure is of your eye and if it's abnormally high. And so that's usually a good indication that you might have it. And then if a doctor does his or her diagnosis and decides that you have it, usually the first thing that we do is we give someone eye drops. So like my mom does these right now. And so every morning, you know, you have to take out your little eye drop bottle and drop a couple drops on your eye. And it's okay. But imagine if you're older, which many people with glaucoma are, and your hands start to shake. And so it can be hard to like aim and hit your eye correctly. And the other problem with a lot of these eye drops is like they can be kind of nasty. Like they have side effects that are kind of unpleasant. They can give you headaches. They can be so severe that they change the color of your eye. A nice side effect is they actually make your eyelashes longer. So someone came up with a nice product, like a mascara product, that made your lashes more luscious using some of these drugs. But they really can be extremely unpleasant, and you might have to take them 2 or 3 times a day, which, you know, if every time you do it, your hand's shaking and it's really uncomfortable, it's kind of not a great quality of life. And sometimes, you know, they only slow down the disease, but they don't cure it.
No, thank you for explaining that. That's really helpful to know. Yeah, so if you can just tell us, like, what is a micro swimmer?
Yeah, for sure. So the idea in this research is that we might be able to replace both the air puff test and the drugs with one microswimmer that did it all. And so this is just like a guess. You know, part of research is guessing at what the right answer might be. And so this is what we think a potential microswimmer could look like. And the idea would be that we would build different components using DNA nanotechnology, and these components would give us functionalities. They give us capabilities. Like we could build containers that would carry a small amount of the medicine dose that you would need, and then you would take it to exactly the right place. And you could control the swimmer using magnetic particles and magnetic fields. And you could also attach sensors to your microswimmer so that they could detect the pressure in your eye in real time. And then we could use signals such as like fluorescent imaging signals to look at what the sensors are reporting, how much pressure are they measuring, and then that would tell us what the pressure in the eye might be.
Got it. No, thank you. And then what are the potential applications of a micro swimmer?
So yeah, so medical is obviously one of them, but we've also seen people do research on using them to build tiny electronic devices, because you can push components together, and we're getting down to that scale in electronic components. We've talked about using them to do like non-invasive exploration. If you want to explore a space or a product or something like that, you could send these swimmers in and then use them to sense and detect things and send back signals that you could process. Yeah, I think those are some of the applications.
Got it. Thank you. And then sort of going into like, if I don't know if you wanted to speak a little bit also about how they work. I think you talked a little bit when you're talking about the applications though.
Yeah, I've got actually some videos here of some work that other people have done, just to give you a picture.
Awesome.
Yeah, so here on the left, this is like one of the big papers from the field. These researchers chain together many magnetic particles. That's this long strand here, and they're connected with DNA, and they're pulling a red blood cell, and they're using a magnetic field to make the whole chain of particles move like this, like in a sinusoidal manner, and that actually causes the whole swimmer to move through a fluid. It's in water here. So that's one idea. This this video on the right here is not as good because I put it together, but all the white specks that you can see or black specks in the top video are magnetic particles connected with DNA again. And we're applying a oscillating or vibrating magnetic field, you could say, and it's causing them to move. Like all of these lines in different colors show paths of the microswimmers moving through a fluid. So this is how we might make some microswimmers move in the future.
Emma, it looks like we've got a question in chat.
Yeah.
How would you inject these microswimmers for medical applications?
Really cool question. Right now, when we make them, we're making them in solution, so it might look a lot like a flu shot or something today. I'm not really sure what it might look like. Though that's a really good question.
Yeah, that's actually what we were going to move on to next. Like, how could they be delivered? And of course, it's a work in progress. But once it gets to the desired location, how do you know how the doctor would determine that it's in the correct spot?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question too. So, like I said earlier, we have the ability to make sensors and structures that report their position or other things that they're measuring using fluorescence. So that's fluorescence. If you think about like bioluminescence is an example of fluorescence, like if you've ever seen pictures of like the jellyfish in the water at night that glow blue or something like that. That's sort of the same phenomenon that we can study with microscopes that can directly capture light along specific frequencies. And so then we can detect the presence of the fluorescent particles. And if we know that they're attached to our microswimmers, then we know that's where the microswimmers are. And so that might be one of the more likely ways we would do it. But we're also thinking about other ways, because you may be injecting these into the body in a place where light can't get through. And so you might need maybe to think about magnetic signals that you'd be collecting, or maybe you'd attach metal particles to them and then be able to detect those. So yeah, it's another area of research that's quite exciting.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, no, I think we can move on to the next slide as well. So yeah, I think we addressed some of these, but like how can we build the microswimmer to be so small that it fits in the human eye?
Right. So I just wanted to ask that question to kind of the next part, which is that at least in our lab, we're using DNA nanotechnology. And so I'll share a little more on that, but I think we wanted to ask people a poll first just to get them thinking.
Yes, we did. So let me go ahead and get that poll ready here.
Yeah, so I think because my lab buddy Charlie had talked about DNA before with many of you, I wanted to see if she'd shared this little factoid about what diameter a DNA double helix is. So if you all remember maybe from science class, DNA in its natural form is two strands that are woven together and they form a double helix. So I'm curious if anyone can remember what size that helix is.
Yeah, so our question is, what is the approximate diameter of a DNA double helix? And our answers are A, 2 millimeters, B, 2 microns, or C, 2 nanometers. So I'll give our friends another couple of seconds to answer here. Okay. I'm gonna end the polling and share my results. And Emma, it looks like our winner here is C, 2 nanometers. Is that our correct answer?
Absolutely. I'm really sorry I was asking you guys geography questions earlier, because you guys are definitely nailing the science questions. So that was unfair of me, but you guys are absolutely right. We're talking about 2.5 nanometers is the average diameter of the DNA double helix, which is really small. I think your hair, like if you looked at the diameter of your hair, it's on the order of microns. So 1,000 times bigger than a nanometer. So DNA is really, really small.
Yeah, so super, super tiny. So we're gonna move on and talk a little bit more, and maybe it'll be a little bit of a refresher for those of us that did attend our first session with Charlie. So tell us, Emma, what is DNA nanotechnology?
Right, so it's actually quite a broad field, really. It's anything that falls under this category is definitely using DNA, but there are so many different ways to build structures, build our own structures with DNA, that it's really quite a diverse field. It's about 20, 30 years old now, and so we've seen a lot of different kinds of examples of it, and I think Charlie might have showed you some of them. But at the core, the entire field is building things with DNA, and we're just taking advantage of some of the natural facts about DNA that we already know. So for starters, we do know that DNA makes up living organisms at the cellular level. So,
and in our chat, can
yeah,
tell me where in a human cell DNA is located? If you'll recall. So yeah, it is located in the nucleus of the cell.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. And as I'm sure you all know, it sort of encodes all the information that we need to make people. Because it contains all of that information, and it's very precisely coded. Like there are very specific rules about how DNA comes together, right? DNA is made out of 4 different types of nucleotides. In short, we refer to them as A's, T's, G's, and C's, or adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And C's can only bind to G's, A's can only bind to T's. And basically that rule is the thing that makes it possible for us to build DNA nanotechnology. Because if we know that these rules exist, then we can design structures that take advantage of the fact that DNA will only bind together in one way. And so that it's crazy. That one fact makes it possible for us to build all of these really cool different structures. And so, sorry, Kristen, please stop me if I'm just getting carried away, but.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought I'm not sure if Charlie showed all of these, but I just wanted to give folks some pictures of things that they've actually been made with DNA, all of these. And scientists and researchers are taking a lot of inspiration from things that we know on the macro scale, things that we've built, out of metal and gears and things like that. Like they've built robot arms out of DNA. We've built gears, containers that can lock and unlock, which might be really useful if you want to deliver drug to a very specific site. We've built spinning rotors, and again, they're using magnets to make the rotor spin around, so we know that it's possible to do that. They've even built these sliding joints, so you can build one DNA nanostructure and then put another one over it and move them relative to each other, which is kind of tricky because it's not like you can just reach in with forceps and put your little DNA pieces together because they're too small. But someone's found a way to do that. So
Emma, how you build these things, are they made on like a DNA scaffold?
Oh my gosh, yes, exactly. Yeah, that's one of the most popular techniques right now is you'll take a very long strand of DNA and then you fold that. And so we call that DNA origami. And the long strand is called a scaffold. And then we staple it together with shorter strands of DNA to make a structure. So like this gear might be, the scaffold is folded back and forth and then we staple it together and kind of curve it as we do so. And that's what forms the structure.
Raise your hand, middle school participants, if this sounds familiar.
Okay, Charlie has taught you guys well. Good job. Yeah, she taught me that too. I know.
I think it's great when we can build on the things that we've already learned.
Totally.
Scaffolding.
Oh, pun intended. Okay, I'm gonna leave now. Awesome. Should I keep going or?
Yeah, feel free to move on.
Cool. So yeah, okay, you guys are all already experts. We know DNA nanotechnology is awesome and we can build all these things with our scaffolds and our staples. And so now the question is, all of these are sort of single components, but like we were talking about earlier, we want to build microswimmers that have lots of components. So the one robot could do many different things, right? But how would we put all of those different components together? Again, remembering that we can't really just pick them up with our hands and move them because they're too small. So some of the research we're doing right now is sort of proposing this kind of new idea, which we're actually drawing inspiration from a lab in the architecture department at MIT called the Self-Assembly Lab. And they study self-assembly on the big scale, on the scale of things we can see and we can touch. And so as an example of what they're interested in, they built a chair by putting pieces of the chair that have magnets in them into a big bin of water, like an aquarium-sized container of water, and then they put in like a fan or something that could agitate the water, and then as the parts bump together in solution, the magnets connect the parts together, and then over time, the whole structure, all the pieces form the chair, and only the chair. And this is essentially what happens on the nanoscale. This is how DNA components come together, is like with the magnets, because we've programmed the DNA staples in the scaffold with very specific sequences of A's, T's, G's, and C's. There's only one way things can come together. So this is really a great analogy for what it looks like when we're doing DNA assembly. And I'm gonna actually show us the video. I'm just gonna pull it up.
That's really interesting. I'm excited to see this video.
It's the coolest thing. When we saw it for the first time, we all were like, oh, this is exactly what we do. Yeah. Okay, let me share. Can you all see like a video of a chair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So here we go, we're dropping the parts in, and then you can see these two items at the bottom are creating motion in the fluid. They're kind of agitating it. And so these components are kind of shaking together, and they've sped it up a little bit because I think it took a little while, but these components are bumping around the walls and bumping into each other, but eventually, ta-da, we have a chair. And notice that like it doesn't form something else. It just forms the chair, which I just think is the coolest thing, because they didn't, the only control that they had was over the parts and how they were going to come together. So,
no IKEA instructions needed.
No IKEA instructions needed, which I think everyone's really happy to hear. All right, sorry, let me bring us back to my screen. Okay, can you see the slides again?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, okay, so we've seen this really cool example, and we're just wondering, can we do the same thing? Could we take all the components that we want to put in our robot and essentially shake them up until they form the microswimmer that we're looking for? But keep in mind, we've talked a lot about the fact that DNA is really, really small. So how would I even know that I got the right structure I wanted? How would I be able to see or make an educated guess about what I've made? And so this is where we're going to start talking about machine learning, because now we're going to try to build a machine learning model that can predict what I made without ever actually taking an image of it, using a really like time-consuming and expensive method.
Emma, before you dive into that, we've had a question come in chat. Do you know how long it took them to make the chair?
That's a wonderful question. I don't know. I was sort of guessing because of the time lapse of the video that it probably took a little while. And I've seen them do some other demonstrations, like they built like a viral capsid using a similar method where they shook parts together in a beaker and all the parts came together. And that seemed to take like a good couple minutes. So yeah, this might not be the fastest method ever because you need to wait for the probability of your parts to come together just right to happen, and that can take some time.
Interesting.
I see Allison's asking, have you ever seen it happen in person? My professor, Professor Taylor, she's actually teaching a class on this semester, and so she actually built one of, she 3D printed one of the viral capsid assemblies, and so she 3D printed all the parts with put the magnets in and then put them in a jar and shook the jar. And it actually did take her like 3 or 4 minutes of shaking on Zoom before she got the whole thing to come together. So it just takes a little time. Yeah.
So Emma, can you tell us a little bit about what is machine learning?
Yeah, so this is like a really exciting area of research. Lots of people are into it, and there's a lot of work happening at CMU. I've really only scratched the surface. I'm definitely not an expert, but it's many of you will talk about many examples. Many of you may have run into or used machine learning, maybe without even knowing it. But essentially, at its core, it's sort of a way of teaching a computer how to think without writing a program. So maybe some of you have started to learn programming and you write instructions, right, to the computer, and it works through those instructions step by step. But machine learning is sort of, we're trying to build essentially a human brain, but on a computer chip. And then we're trying to teach that brain to think the way a human would think without writing specific instructions. Because if you want to do complicated tasks, and you want the computer to be able to do many different kinds of tasks, it often doesn't really make sense to write out explicitly, you know, here's how you take a drink of water, here's how you go make a bowl of cereal. It would be more efficient if the robot just learned how to do it the way we do. So that's at its core what it is. Should we go to the poll?
Exactly, yes. So we have our next poll here. And it's which of these are examples of machine learning in action? And you can choose more than one example. A is your Netflix recommendations list. B, self-driving cars. C, the best Go player in the world. Or D, email spam filters. So I'll give our friends a couple seconds to answer that.
And you guys can pick multiple answers if you want to, just so you know. Oh, I guess it says on there, sorry. Oh yeah, sorry, to clarify, we mean like for C, we mean that machine learning is the best Go player in the world. Go is, actually I think Sharfin on this call plays Go. Go is a very old game that I actually don't know how to play it myself, but it's sort of akin to chess if you're familiar with chess. It's 2 players playing against each other trying to take control over the board. I think I'll have a picture of it in a slide or 2 as well to help people figure it out. Okay, Malachi plays a little Go, right on, awesome.
Okay.
All right.
I'm polling and share the results here.
So it looks like definitely everybody thinks that machine learning is helpful in self-driving cars, and you are all absolutely correct. However, all of these are actually true. So you are all right all the time, which is good. So yeah, we use machine learning for lots of different things now, and a lot of them, you know, are in things that we interact with all the time. So I picked this particular image of a self-driving car because this is Pittsburgh, and I imagine maybe some of you have seen these driving down the street. These cars with these like large lidars or these sort of scanners on the top of the car are collecting information as they drive down the road, because we have some research facilities here in Pittsburgh that are interested in doing self-driving. So that's definitely huge area of research in machine learning right now. But all the others on this image, you know, are things you might have interacted with as well. Like we were talking about, here's a Go board, and this company called DeepMind built a computer that was able to beat the world champion in Go a couple of years ago. And there's actually a fantastic documentary about it that's I think free on YouTube if you're curious. It's very, very cool, very interesting. Also, if anyone here is a bit of a gamer, like I love playing StarCraft 2, and it turns out that the same company that beat AlphaGo is now trying to beat StarCraft 2, which is extremely challenging because as maybe some of you know, StarCraft 2 is just a very diverse game. There's a lot more options for playing than there are in Go. So it's quite a challenging game to play, even if you're a human. And then maybe some of you watch a little Netflix or something like that, and the way that the website decides what options to show to you is using machine learning. They know, you know, Netflix knows what you've watched in the past, and they kind of make educated guesses about what you might want to watch next, and then show you those options in your screen. Yeah. And yeah, Professor Webster Wood is, machine learning is definitely part of AI. Yes. For sure. And so, you know, we've talked about, there are lots of things that machine learning is getting very good at. You know, I think these are all examples of things that work really, really well with machine learning. But I don't think it's going to take over the world yet. Sometimes it doesn't quite go the way you want it. And Professor Westerwood actually taught me this example, but a couple of years ago, some researchers tried to teach a computer to identify the difference between pictures of wolves and pictures of dogs. And, you know, we can see here in some of the examples, most of the time, the computer was pretty good. You know, this picture is of a wolf, this picture on the right, the corgi, definitely a dog, so on and so forth. But then we look here at the bottom row, and this picture on the right is definitely a dog. It's, you know, it's wearing a collar, it looks like a dog, but the computer thought it was a wolf. And as it turns out, the researchers hadn't really taught the computer to do what they thought they'd done. If you look at the top three images of the dogs, they're all sort of in like domesticated scenes. You know, sometimes they're inside, sitting on a couch. Sometimes they're like near a park or something like that. They're not in the wild. They're in like human-looking places. But on the left, all these wolves are in the snow and rugged terrain. You know, there's trees, and so when the computer saw a picture of a dog with the same background, it just assumed that dog was a wolf. So it actually hadn't learned anything about dogs and wolves at all. It had just learned what kind of backgrounds there were in all the pictures and used that to make a determination about whether it was looking at a wolf or a dog. And it can be quite hard to figure out why these things are happening. And so machine learning is actually still quite challenging because sometimes it's hard to figure out what's going on inside the brain of the computer. So, okay, so we've talked about, you know, where machine learning is teaching computers to think like humans. We're kind of we give them sort of like a brain. We call it a neural network. It's just lots of, it's learning lots of like weights or neurons, and they're all connected together, and that sort of mimics the way our brains are built. And it's, like we said, it's a very rich area of research. There are lots of different kinds of models, different ways to put neural networks together. But one thing I want to focus on just for today, because we'd never get through everything in time, especially because I talk too much, but we're going to look at a very specific model called a generative adversarial network, or a GAN. And we're going to use the GAN because it's why I'm using my research. We use it because we can train it to basically produce images or other pieces of information that it's never seen in training, but that look like things that it's seen during training. So it's just useful because it's generating novel things. So that's the key idea to keep in mind. So let's talk about how they might work, for example. So we start with a GAN has two parts to it. First, we have an artist, and our artist is drawing pictures in this case. And let's just say that our artist is learning to draw different animals. So Maybe we're drawing some cats, some dogs, maybe a parrot. And then the other half of the GAN is that we have some kind of an art critic, or we're going to call him a guide for this example. And the art critic is looking at the pictures and trying to tell the artist what kind of pictures the critic wants to see. Because, you know, in my research, I don't want my GAN to produce any possible structure. I really want to produce images of structures that look a lot like what I will see during experimentation. So I need them to look kind of like the real thing, but I also want them to be novel. I want them to be a little bit different from the data I'm already using to train the artist. So over time, the artist is going to draw a picture, show it to the critic, and the critic's going to say, yeah, you know, I'm liking the pictures of cats, but I don't really want to see dogs. I don't want to see parrots. I just want cats. And so over time, the artist says, okay, cats. I can do cats. Let's do cats. And then it draws more cats and more cats. And it may still make some mistakes. You know, maybe we draw a puppy instead of a kitty. Maybe we draw like I think that's a leopard, sorry. Maybe we draw, you know, a big cat instead of a domestic cat. But for the most part, like our artist starts to learn to draw cats, which is kind of cool because remember, our artist is just a computer. And so we've somehow taught it to draw cats without ever, you know, taking it to art class. So that's kind of the idea of what a GAN does, a generative adversarial network does. And we will come back to this idea in the activity.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, Malachi says it's a jaguar. Thank you.
Before we do that, we're going to learn a little bit more about where Emma does her research on campus. And now we're going to move on to a demo between Emma and some of our mentors here. And this demo is going to be an example of what we're going to do during our breakout sessions. So mentors, if you can please get your activity sheets ready, and you will need a pen or pencil. So Emma, if you sort of want to explain this activity, and Emma, you are going to be the guide, obviously, for the purposes of this particular activity. And our mentors, you are going to be the artists. We're just going to have the one round, and we'll have, you know, up to 4 attempts to see if our artists are able to get the correct animal.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're basically going to work through this discussion that we just had on this slide. So I'm going to be the guide, the grumpy cat on the right. I'm thinking of an animal that I want to see. Maybe it's a cat, maybe it's something else. But I'm not going to tell anybody else. And I'm going to ask all the mentors. Okay, Vicky's all set. I just want you to draw an animal, and I want you to do it in 30 seconds or less. So stick figures are great. We are not looking for Picassos. And once you draw your animal, I would ask you to hold it up to your camera so I can see it. And then I'm going to give you one piece of feedback, like just you know, about one aspect of your drawing that you need to change in order to get closer to the animal I want to see. And this is replicating the way we train GANs to actually think. This is the way we train a lot of machine learning models to think. So, okay, let me get a timer pulled up here. And if everybody's ready, on the count of 3, we can start. 1, 2, 3. Vicky, I'm really worried you've already guessed my animal. I just feel like you're that good. Okay, we have 10 seconds left. Okay, time's up. Okay, so you guys see that was really fast, so it doesn't have to be good, just get the idea across. So, okay, Vicky, can you, okay, Vicky's got a penguin, it looks like. So, Vicky, no wings on your drawing. Okay, Allison, what have you got? Oh, sorry,
You may have to turn off your virtual background.
okay, no tail. All right, let's see, anybody else got one they want to show? Okay, Maddie. Oh my gosh, that is a great drawing. The tongue is not as long. Sharfin, okay, Sharfin, more legs, please. Kathleen, the ears, there are no ears. Julian, also, more legs. And Terry, sorry. Oh, sorry, yeah, didn't think about that part. Okay.
So with your virtual background, it might not work all that well, but that's okay. We sort of get the idea of what we're looking for. So would you like to put an additional 30 seconds on the clock for the second attempt?
Yeah. Yep, got it. Thank you. Sorry. Okay.
Mentor artists.
Ready, set, go. Okay, we have 15 seconds left. Five seconds left. Okay, that's time. All right. Oh, okay. Vicky, even more legs. Sharfin, more legs. Allison's got it. Yeah, sorry, there we go. Centipede. Perfect. Nicely done. Yeah, awesome. Allison's the fastest machine learning model in the West.
For this one, yeah.
All right, that's great. So I hope that sort of explains our first activity here. We are going to take a quick 5-minute break. I have 11:43 on the clock. So we are going to come back at 11:48, and then we're going to go off into our breakout rooms. And then after that, we'll come back together for our conclusion. So take 5, everybody, get up, stretch, do what you need to do for 5 minutes, and then you will need to come back with a pencil or pen and the GAN and Microswimmers activity sheet that's available on Canvas. We'll see you in 5 minutes. All right, so welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the breakout room activities and you learned a lot about GAN and hopefully can understand more about machine learning, and hopefully you got to do a little bit with the auto draw as well. So here's where we want to see your drawings. If anybody wants to share, please go ahead. Maybe raise your hand and then we can go from there. You can share your drawing if you would like. If you don't want to, that's okay too. But maybe you had some really excellent stick figures.
I think Allison raised her hand to share.
Oh, yeah. So Allison, if you'd like to share. You can go ahead and share your screen.
All right, so for the second one, it was supposed to be a mouse. So I first drew a dog, then I drew a panda, and then I drew an ant, but it was a mouse.
Oh, I see your hints there. Did that say rounder ears? Is that what that said?
So the first hint was smaller and rounder ears, and then for the second hint, it was smaller, but it was the right shape and not as a curly tail. And then for the third hint, it was less legs.
Oh, okay.
I can't find my first page, so.
No problem.
So I think it was a butterfly. And
Okay.
so I first drew a cat, and then I tried to draw a chicken, and then I drew a butterfly.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Okay. So thank you, Allison, for sharing. How about Juliet? Would you like to share?
So this is from our first round. I can't see my camera right now. So can you see it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the final answer was a tiger. So I drew an otter first because it's my favorite animal. Then I drew a zebra. Then I drew a jaguar or a cheetah. And then I drew a domestic cat.
Okay.
And then this is our second one. And then the final answer was a person. So I drew a cat, then a monkey, then a gorilla, then a person.
So thank you for sharing that, Juliet. So maybe in the chat, you can share with me what hints were the most helpful to you throughout this whole process.
Borrowings on a snake.
That's a good one.
Location of the animal. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, it sounds like pieces of information about. Oh, Malachi's got some too. Yeah, there you go. Nice. Yeah, when you give like a big hint, like changing the number of legs kind of tells you like maybe I'm not even looking for a mammal, maybe I'm looking for like an insect or something like that. That's us using like extra knowledge we have about the animal kingdom to kind of very quickly figure out what animal the guide is thinking of, even if the guide didn't tell you anything to start with. And we're all actually very powerful machine learning models, because often it can take a lot longer for a computer to figure things out because it doesn't necessarily have all that extra knowledge that you all do, which is like, if you say, I want to put wings on a snake, you think, maybe they're talking about butterflies, but a computer wouldn't necessarily know that. So that's kind of one of the remaining challenges in AI, is just how do you give the computer extra knowledge about the world that it's in, beyond just classify this picture or something like that.
Exactly. And how about auto draw? What else, were you able to use auto draw? So some of you were able to get to it, some of you didn't, it sounds like. So I would definitely check out auto draw, especially if you didn't have a chance to get to it. And then I'm going to include a supplemental resource and sort of an extension activity in our chat right now. And this is something made by a company called NVIDIA, and they primarily make graphics cards and video cards. In this sort of demo GAN program is called GoGAN, named after the artist Gauguin. So check out that one as well and see if it passes the Turing test. And I think you'll find that it does not. Because things, while they can look really, really interesting and stunning, there's still something that seems a little bit off about it. So you know that it's definitely not real. So yeah. Do we have any other final questions or comments about our program today? Does anybody want to share? I would like to remind everyone to please fill out the survey after this session, maybe while it's still fresh in your mind. The surveys are always going to be located on our Canvas site, and they're going to be under quizzes. And of course, these are all non-graded. We just want to know how we did on our presentations. I'd like to thank Emma for presenting today. I hope we all learned a lot from Emma about DNA Microswimmers and GAN and machine learning. I know I did.
And it looks like, sorry, I was just gonna point to the chat. It looks like a couple questions had come in for Emma.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Sorry, Malachi's asking, how do you direct the swimmers if you can't see them? Great question. And yeah, Juliet's saying, I think magnets have something to do with it. You're both definitely on the right track. We are working on this problem too. I think one way we're thinking about doing it is if we had a swarm of swimmers instead of one, and we were, again, using something like fluorescence, or we were trying to detect perturbations in a magnetic field, then maybe if we had a swarm of swimmers, they'd be giving off enough signal that we could detect it. So maybe not using optics, using light, but using other signals, we'd be able to pick them up. Have you used the drawings guessing thing before? I definitely hadn't before today, but my breakout group, we tried to fool it. So if you want to try, like, we tried drawing animals in scenes, and then suddenly it couldn't figure out what animal we were drawing anymore, and it thought we were drawing something completely different. So you guys might give that a go. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Well, again, for presenting today and for joining us today. Thank you to all of our mentors as well, and to our coordination team. And thank you to our middle school participants. I hope everybody enjoyed this session, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks for putting it together, Kristen.
Sure, you're very welcome. Have a great day, everyone.